Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Subconscious Medicine. Thanks so much for joining. Um, Before we dive into today's episode, I just want to give a little shout out. Um, Actually, this opens the door for a bit of a wider discussion, but I have been doing some work to try to promote this podcast a little bit more. Just because I want to see where this can take me and to see how much it can grow. And so, one of the things I did to promote it was reach out to some of my own favorite podcast hosts, influencers, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, like those type of people, and just shouted myself out, which is a really uncomfortable thing to do, but you kind of have to, I feel like, in this space. And just gave them a little debrief about who I am, what this podcast is all about, and just shared the link with it to kind of see what would happen. And if any of you guys know who Fiona Jordan is, she makes content on all platforms. I originally found her on TikTok, but I also have followed her Instagram account for a very long time. And she read my message and liked it, and then she reposted it on her story. And let me just say, that woman is amazing. She's like my spirit animal. She embodies all of the characteristics and talents that I aspire to have one day. And I just look up to her so much. I think she's amazing. And she's just radiates confidence and good energy. And she's so ambitious. She has, her content is one kind of source of income. She's always worked a job, or what it seems like ever since I've followed her. She used to work at this really cool restaurant. She lives in Pennsylvania. I don't remember if I said that. And graduated Penn State this year. But yeah, she runs a clothing resale business. She does a lot of thrifting, which I love to thrift. So, actually, the shirt I'm wearing right now is thrifted. It's a tennis shirt. I know literally nothing about tennis, so little imposter syndrome right now, but that's okay. It's cute. But anyways, I just love her and I think she's so cool. And the fact that she shouted me out was amazing. Oh, it just made my day. So yeah, I messaged a lot of other people who haven't yet acknowledged the message, and that's okay. They're busy people. I understand. But it's worth a shot. And it really just highlighted the fact that you never you're going to miss every opportunity that you don't take, and those moments where things feel uncomfortable or uncertain prove to be the most fruitful. So challenge yourself. um but yeah, so this week is an exciting week, actually bittersweet, but this is the last week I'm working at my summer internship, and I don't know, I have mixed thoughts. I really enjoyed my summer at or in this position, but it's also proved to be really challenging and eye-opening, and I'm extremely grateful for the experience. But I think I'm ready to kind of let go and move on with my education and professional experience. I was able to foster some really close-knit relationships with some of the kiddos that I work with, and that has been a really rewarding experience. But some of the work behind the scenes of nonprofit life is definitely not what I expected, and it's a tough pill to swallow. But again, I'm really grateful for the experience. I learned a lot, that's for certain, and I know that these experiences will serve me well in my future endeavors. So again, bittersweet, but I'm excited to kind of close this chapter and welcome the new one. Um, so yeah, other than that, my week's pretty chill. Again, I'm filming this on a Wednesday. I seem to always be filming on Wednesdays again because it's my day off. But yeah, I also am getting back into lifting, which has been exciting. If you know, I used to lift a lot more, and then I picked up running, and so it kind of just like fell to the back burner. But I'm really gonna try to balance the two out more because I think it's important to like switch up your workouts a little bit, makes it more exciting. And I don't want to like get in the rut of making things too regimented and like doing the same thing over and over again. So yeah, that's been exciting. But other than that, it's been busy. I don't know. The fact that tomorrow is August is mind blowing. I cannot wrap my head around that. This summer went by so fast, and I know I say that every summer. I feel like everyone does, but something about this summer in particular seems like it just flew by. Maybe it's because I took a summer classes too. That like school doesn't feel that long ago. That's actually probably why it feels like it went by so fast. But because realistically, I didn't finish school until the last day of June instead of the first week of May. That's like a big difference, a full 2 months. So yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming that's kind of why, but either way, summer's wrapping up. It's coming to a close. So sad. Although I think next week is tax-free week, right? I think so, yeah. So if you're going back to school shopping, keep that in mind. That's fun. But anyways, since the summer is ending, it got me thinking a lot about my bucket list because I know a lot of people make a bucket list like for the summer specifically. I didn't really do that. I guess I did kind of like in the back of my head, but I wasn't like explicit about it. I didn't write it down anywhere. But I've been seeing other people like reflect on their summer bucket list, show the things that they checked off, show the things that they didn't get to yet. And it got me thinking about my own bucket list, specifically the things that I haven't gotten to yet, and then like why they're on there, and just reflecting on why those things are important to me or what about those seems interesting. Some are a lot more trivial than others. Some of them are like the quintessential bucket list items, but some of them I feel like are kind of unique. So I don't know. I also think sharing your bucket list with people can be really a vulnerable experience, and I think it shares a lot about a person. I always say these two things tell you a lot about a person. One, sharing a bucket list. Two, seeing the refrigerator, which I know sounds weird, but I really think you can tell a lot about a person from the refrigerator. Like, is it organized? What types of food is in there? It tells you a little bit about maybe their lifestyle. Like, I'm thinking people who are on like carnivore diets are like crazy to me. I don't know how they do that. So that would tell you a lot about a person. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just always think that those two things, a bucket list and seeing someone's fridge, just to me feel so vulnerable. And I'm like so nosy. So I love seeing. It's reminding me of looking in my grandma's fridge. I swear to God, every time I go to my grandma's house, I open her refrigerator and I'm like, what do you eat? Like there's simply no food in there. It consists of every condiment you could possibly think of in this world, multiple variations of cheese, and then usually rotten grapes. And like honestly, that's it. Like she just never has food in there, and I'm like, Grandma, do we eat at all? Whoa. Like I don't understand. But anyways, yeah. That's just a little anecdote, I guess. But so yeah, I wanted to go through, this isn't my whole bucket list, obviously, but some like top tier items on my bucket list. Again, some I think are more basic than others, but some I think are really interesting. So cheers to getting vulnerable. Okay, the first thing is something we've talked about a lot, travel. But on my bucket list specifically, I have a list for domestic and a list for international travel, and they're ranked in order, like in a specific order of how much I want to go to those places. So I thought I could share a few of those places with you guys and kind of like tell you about why I want to go there. Okay, so let's start with domestic. The first is Chicago, which I feel like everyone wants to go to Chicago if they haven't been. First of all, I'm a city person, and I feel like I've been to a lot of cities in the US, but I haven't been to Chicago. In fact, I haven't really been anywhere in the Midwest. I've pretty much stuck to the coasts mostly. So, yeah, I want to go to Chicago because it's a city and I like cities. I also want to go to Chicago because this is really niche, but one of my favorite Drake is like probably one of my favorite artists ever. And one of my favorite Drake songs is Chicago Freestyle. So, duh, yeah. Um Also I've heard food in Chicago is good. Although the fact that people talk about Chicago pizza is like a disgrace to New Englanders because everyone knows like thin crust pizza is the thing in New England, and I'm pretty sure Chicago pizza is like deep. What's it called? It's thick crust pizza. So definitely not the reason I want to go there, but I do feel like they'd have a lot of good food. But yeah, it just seems like a pretty city. So, and Drake references it a lot, so that's kind of why I want to go there. But that has always been at like the top of my list, and I honestly have no idea why I haven't gone. It seems like a pretty easy trip. I think I had a layover there once. Right? Their airport is O'Hare. Am I making that up? Chicago O'Hare? I'm pretty sure, yeah. And I had a layover there once, but I'm not counting that. I didn't like explore the city at all. I really want to go there and visit because it seems fun. But the next is Seattle, which everyone says I'm like crazy for saying. The obvious reason for this is Grey's Anatomy. Duh. I'm actually binge watching Grey's Anatomy for the second time right now, currently in season 3. Arguably the best show in ever, like in this universe. It is so good. The character development is insane. I've never watched a show and loved and hated so many characters at the same time. Meredith Grey, she's everything I want to be in a woman. She's incredible. Love her so much. She's amazing. Sloane, hate him. Callie, hate her. Arizona, hate her. Like, there are so many characters in that show that I really, really, really don't like. Even Stevens drives me crazy sometimes. She's just like too emotional for me, but I don't know. Yeah. So there's characters in that show that I love and hate, and I feel like I can't say that about any other show. I just feel so strongly, and the character development is insane. Christina, she like scares me a little bit, but she's amazing. Love her. What a like powerful woman. She's amazing. Um okay, yeah. So Chicago and Seattle, and then the third one, I only picked 3. There's obviously a lot more. The third one is Nashville. This is so basic. Everyone wants to go to Nashville. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know why I want to go. I guess it's just because like there's a really strong cultural influence, the music, the nightlife. It just seems fun. Seems like a fun trip. To be honest, I don't think I could survive more than like a weekend there, like 2 or 3 days. I really feel like I'd be set after that, and I definitely would not go for like a bachelorette trip or things like that. I would just want to go with like friends. I mean, I guess if it was a friend's bachelorette, I wouldn't really have a choice and I'd have to go, but you know what I mean. Um, yeah, I do really want to go to Nashville though. It seems fun. And I feel like you've got to do it once, you know? I think once I go, I won't really have any desire to go back. Whereas, like, I see myself going to Chicago multiple times. Probably not Nashville, but I don't know. You gotta try it out. Okay, then international. I feel like these ones are a little bit more niche. The first is Thailand. I love Thai food. It's probably my favorite food ever. I love Italian food. Like, I could eat Italian food every day of my life. I can't eat Thai food every day of my life, but I love it and it's such a special treat. And I love pad Thai and like drunken noodles, and oh, I love Thai food so much. So yeah, I do want to go to Thailand really bad. Also, I've heard the people there are like the nicest people you will ever meet, and I've heard that the fruit there is like the most fresh and juicy fruit ever. And I love fruit just like as a little snack. So yeah, I want to go to Thailand. It just looks gorgeous. But that's like always been my top tier international destination. Um Secondly, I desperately want to go to Portugal. Oh, so bad. I'm actually so mad because my grandma just booked a trip there, and I told her, I was like, please invite me. Please let me come with you. And she was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I genuinely think she was joking, or she just doesn't love me. I'm kidding. I love you, Mimi. But she didn't invite me, so maybe I'll just book my own trip and go by myself because I need to go, and it just looks amazing. There's also, you know that, um, I don't even know what it's called, but that picture that, like, everyone takes when they go to Portugal, like, the umbrellas, I see it on Instagram all the time. Just, like, a walkway with a bunch of umbrellas that, like, hang in the air. It's so cool. Um, I would so be a tourist and take a picture there, though. But yeah, it seems gorgeous. I honestly know nothing about Portuguese food. And I do know Spanish, like, enough to communicate if I went to, like, Spain. But honestly, Portuguese and Spanish are pretty different. I don't feel like it'd be good enough for me to be able to communicate. I think I'd probably be able to understand them, but I don't think they would understand me. Um, yeah, and maybe even there I'm overestimating my abilities, but the point being that I want to go to Portugal. And then I want to go to Italy. I guess this is kind of a cop out because I have been to Italy, but I only went to Milan and I only went for literally a day. So, um, that was when I went to Paris for like 2 weeks. We went on a day trip to Milan, and oh my god, I wish we spent more time there. It was incredible. It was so pretty, and I feel like everyone goes to like Rome or Florence or whatever, and I can't speak. I've never been to those places, and I want to go really bad. But I feel like no one talks about Milan. Also, though, the fashion there is insane. It's literally Devil Wears Prada. It's crazy. Like, the entire day didn't see a single person wearing athletic wear. They're all in like luxury designer clothes. The purses are so expensive. It's crazy. Um, yeah, it's just a gorgeous city. The architecture, the food, incredible. And I'm someone who like comes from an Italian family with really good cooks and feel like I've had the luxury of growing up on really good traditional Italian food, but oh my god, it's just different when you're there. I don't really know what it is, but I would love to go back to Italy. Anywhere in Italy, I would go. But yeah, those are some of my dream travel destinations. There's obviously a lot more, but those are just like kind of the ones that first come to mind when I think about travel. But I also am the type of person who like would never turn down a trip. Like if you told me to go anywhere right now, I'd be like, okay, packing my bag, let's go. Because I think you never regret a trip. Honestly, they're just the experiences you get while traveling are once in a lifetime, and I really don't think there's anywhere that I would turn down ever. Alrighty. Sorry, everyone. We had a little intermission because my computer died. Poor planning, Ella. But anyways, that sort of wrapped up travel. Next bucket list item. You might think I'm crazy, but I have always wanted to publish a book. I feel like I've wanted to do this since like elementary school, and the idea of what the book would be about has changed a million and one times. I am not a good like narrative writer, so it definitely wouldn't be like a fictional story of any sort. And I definitely don't think my life, at least to this point, is nearly interesting enough to write a biography. So, and that just opens the world up to too much criticism that I'm not willing to let into my life. So, um, it wouldn't be a biography either, or at least an autobiography. But I do think it might be interesting to, in a non autobiographical way, talk about some of my experiences, like real life experiences, as a story. I think that would be fascinating, particularly about potentially like my career and my experiences there, which obviously I'm just barely starting. But I think that it's a career field that's often overlooked, and a lot of the voices within um, like the foster care system and people, and or children specifically experiencing with like adverse experiences are often silenced. I think that I, as a privileged white woman, if I have the capacity to help them tell their story, that could be really powerful. So I've always wanted to write a book. I feel like I'm a pretty strong writer, but I also know nothing about the book writing process, and I really don't know how like publication and all that kind of stuff works. I'm also really bad at rejection, so getting letters from publication companies would definitely hurt my ego a bit, along with like extensive edits, because I feel like I'm super particular and I'm my hardest critic. So if other people were tearing it to shreds, that might get to me a little bit. So definitely have to build up the confidence to do this, but this is like a lifelong mission. I really don't see myself fulfilling this until probably much later in life, but I want that because I want to be experienced. I want to have a lot of knowledge under my belt before I try to literally publish it to the world. But yeah, I've always wanted to write a book. I think that would be such an amazing experience. Also, something about being able to design the cover and making it like exactly what I want is really fascinating. As I mentioned, this podcast is kind of my first creative endeavor, and even doing like graphics for this has been so fun and so exciting. So I can only imagine being able to do that for a book cover. That sounds like so much fun. Like, what would it look like? No, I don't know. But also, just seeing your name on the cover of a book would be so crazy. Do people publish books anonymously? Oh my god, wait. I don't know if I would do that. I feel like if I worked so hard on something like that, I'd want my name to be on it. But I bet you people do that, right? Like, I'm sure there's someone who's done that before. I mean, I can't think of an example, but I'm also not a very seasoned reader. But that would be crazy. Imagine working that hard on something, like years and years, just to not put your name on it. Those are some humble people, because I don't think I would do that, but that's awesome. But yeah, always wanted to write a book. I actually had an internship in high school. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but a woman who lived in my town had reached out to our high school English department, and she basically said, I'm writing a book, and it's about women in STEM, and she was interviewing all these women all across the world in various different career fields within STEM. And she was interviewing them, and she was looking for an AP English high school student at our high school to help her transcribe all of these interviews so that she could work on like the storytelling process for the book. And so yeah, my teacher recommended me, and I interviewed with the woman really informally, but just met her and sort of we talked about her vision and what she was looking for, and she hired me, and I did that for maybe like 8 months. I think I did that, and I made my own schedule. Like, I did it on my own time, and then every week at the end of the week I would report to her my progress and split my hours. But it was honestly great money. I was working like 15 to 20 hours a week, and she paid really good. It was like $18 an hour. It was honestly great, and the fact that that was my first job ever, because I was like 15. But yeah, that was kind of awesome. And the stories were really fascinating. Some of the things that those women had done were amazing. Although, like I said, because they were from all different parts of the world, a lot of them had really, really heavy accents. And it was really challenging to try to sit there and transcribe every single word. Because obviously, when someone has a heavy accent that you haven't been like predisposed to, it's hard. And I had to be like really accurate, because something as simple as like did or didn't can like completely change a storyline. So yeah, luckily after I transcribed them, the author would send them to the person, like to the interviewee, to review, to make sure I didn't make any edits. But I wanted to make their life as easy as possible, so it was pretty meticulous. But that was a really cool experience. But yeah, so I want to write a book, not about women in STEM, but I do want to write a book, and that would be a really surreal moment, like seeing your book on the bookshelf of any bookstore ever. That would be really cool. Okay, number 3, skydiving. I know this is so cliche on like everyone's list, I feel like, but I just want to do it so bad. My best friend has been skydiving like multiple times actually. And it just looks insane. So cool. I also feel like there's no better place to do it than Florida, because skydiving, like, on the coast. I can only imagine what the views look like. So, yeah, I really wanna go. I learned recently how expensive it is, though. It's, like, crazy expensive, but I guess that makes sense. There's a lot of, like, liability there. But, yeah, I do really, really wanna go skydiving, and I honestly wanna fulfill that within the next, like, year. Which is funny because I am scared of heights, but for some reason, the thought of skydiving doesn't scare me at all. Maybe because you don't really realize how high up you are until you start falling. Also, I'm not scared of flying at all, so that's like half the battle is getting up there. And you just gotta come back down. So, anyways, yeah, I really wanna go skydiving, and that feels like a short term one that we can achieve relatively quick, so that's exciting. Okay, shout out Hannah, my sister. This started as kind of like a joke, I feel like, but has actually now become something I really, really, really want to do. So we grew up in a household. Shout out to my mom also. My mom cooked every single night for dinner. Like when I tell you we never ate out, we ate out 3 times a year, and it was on me and my sister's birthdays. Like on the day of our birthday, our parents would let us pick where we wanted to like order food from or go out to eat, and we would go. But we never ate out. And my mom also worked nights until I was literally like 14 or 15 years old. So she would like work nights, come home at like 7ish in the morning. She would get us all ready for school. We'd go off to school. She'd go to sleep. She would wake up like 30 minutes before we came home from school. She would get us off the bus. She would cook dinner or like prepare dinner and just leave it out. And she would literally write instructions on the aluminum foil for like my dad of how long to cook it at what temperature or whatever. It was honestly kind of cute. And my dad would just like throw it in the oven when he got home, and she would go to work. But my mom cooked every night. Like, there was a homemade meal every single night. And honestly, most nights, especially when we got older, there were multiple meals because me and my sisters don't like any of the same foods. For a while, my sister was vegetarian, and then she was vegan, and I'm just picky. And yeah, I don't know. My dad's also really picky. So yeah, she always catered to our likings, which I've always appreciated. But yeah, my mom has always made us homemade meals. And so because of that, I feel like much of the reason that I enjoy cooking so much is because I always grew up with her in the kitchen, and that we would always join. So for years now, me and my sister have been saying, oh, we're going to open a restaurant, and it's not going to be like any specific type of food. The menu is not going to go together at all. It's simply going to be our favorite recipes, like from our childhood. And they're all just going to be on the menu, and people can come and pick from our favorites, which is honestly such a funny concept to me because that's like not how restaurants work at all. Like usually restaurants have like some sort of theme, but we've always talked about how it would just be the most random assortment of foods, but it would be like our favorite foods or the things that we enjoy cooking the most. And there would be like a Hannah menu and an Ella menu. And I just think it would be great. I think it would be so funny. And just a little shout out to our mom. Obviously, there's some recipes on there that wouldn't necessarily be from our mom, but there are some recipes in specific that I feel like have been passed down from like generation to generation that me and my sister now love, and I think that'd be so cool to incorporate. Like I'm thinking of banana bread in specific. My mom has this cookbook um that she had from her grandmother. So it's now 1, 2, 3. Like me and my sister would be the fourth generation to have this cookbook. And in it is a banana bread recipe that my mom has cooked like all my life, and I truly think it is the best banana bread ever. It is so good. And she actually bought this like within the last year or so. She bought a new copy of the same cookbook because the old one is so like it's falling apart so much that the recipe has become like hard to read because there's the binding broke off of it, and there's smudges of God knows what in it, but we obviously still kept the original one. But the banana bread recipe would definitely make the cut for our restaurant, and just a bunch of other favorite foods, which honestly there is a lot of overlap in, surprisingly. Um, but yeah, I just think that would be so much fun. I don't know where this restaurant would be. We always used to say it'd be in New York City, but that was when my sister lived in New York City, or well, she lived in Long Island, but same difference. I don't know. Maybe it would still be there, but I don't see myself living there, so maybe not. But I think that would be so cool. Also, designing a restaurant, physically, interior designing, would be so much fun. Ugh, I don't know. I think that would just be so cool. I also don't know if we would be the chefs. I guess it would depend on where the restaurant was located. If we would be the chefs or if we would hire people and just teach them how to make the things we wanted. But yeah, we've always wanted to open a restaurant together, and I think that would be so much fun. Okay, the next one's kind of niche, but I've always wanted to start a nonprofit, and this has been at the forefront of my mind recently because, again, I've worked at a nonprofit all summer. And to be honest, I don't know what I would want the nonprofit to look like, how I want it to sort of function. Definitely something around my desired profession and career field. But I think it would be really important to make sure it was something I was really passionate and interested about, because nonprofit work is not easy, and if you don't love your job, it makes it really impossible to do it well. So definitely centered around foster care or children experiencing abuse and neglect or trauma. And I've always thought about maybe combining that with athletics, because sports and nutrition have been a pretty prominent component of my life for a long time. So I don't know what that would look like, but yeah, I've always wanted to start a nonprofit. I think it's just so important that we give back to the communities that we come from. I'm very lucky in that I come from a relatively wealthy community, and a lot of the kids and families already have their needs or can meet their own needs, and don't need to seek a lot of community support. But we are surrounded by communities that are very much not like that, and I think it's really important to give back to your community. I think about Tampa in specific. If you've ever been here, it's a really, really nice city. It's pretty modern. I compare it to New York City because that's the closest city I guess I would have to it that I've been to frequently, that I grew up going to. And I mean, granted, New York City is definitely bigger than Tampa, but I guess it would be the closest thing I could compare it to, from if you're from Connecticut. And it's nothing like that. If you're talking about things like poverty and homelessness alone, there's far less of that here than there is in New York City or in Boston or whatever. And so yeah, it's a pretty well kept city. It's really nice. Obviously, it has its areas, but every city does. Um, but working in a local nonprofit this summer, I have been able to touch those communities, been able to touch those underprivileged areas of the city that maybe I wouldn't have been exposed to had I not had this experience. University of Tampa is kind of centered, it's nestled right in downtown Tampa, and I live maybe 4 or 5 blocks away from campus, so I really don't get outside of downtown much. And downtown is just a bunch of really tall buildings, business buildings, and apartment complexes. And so there's not too much to see. Um, and then there's other sections of Tampa that are really wealthy, um, that I've sort of explored because they have shopping centers or restaurants or those types of attractions. But the community that I work in, or the section of Tampa that I work in, is probably one that I wouldn't have explored much had I not worked there. And so I'm really grateful for that experience. But I think that starting a local nonprofit specifically is a way to touch those areas of the community that you otherwise wouldn't have contact with. And that's something I'm really fascinated with, is really immersing yourself in your community and finding ways that you can support and uplift each other. Um, and it's important to recognize that that doesn't always come with a monetary commitment, right? So a lot of times we think of like donating money in order to support our community. And yes, that's, very, very important. Our nonprofit would not be able to work without the hundreds of donors that we have, without our employee who writes grant letter or grant applications to literally the government, so that we can support the needs of our community. That's what makes our work possible. But just as important is the volunteers that come in, like myself. Like my position is unpaid, so I guess in essence I'm a volunteer, and I come in and I facilitate the programming with the kids. Right, that's what's making the funding worth it, is seeing those little kids smile. And things like that or experiences like that are what allow our community to grow and thrive. And I would love to be able to provide those experiences for my own community members. So I've brainstormed a lot about what that nonprofit would look like. Obviously, haven't settled on an idea yet, and I'm not rushing that. That's something I want to put a lot of time and effort into, but I think that's an amazing goal, and I'd really love to check that off my bucket list too. I don't think that's something a lot of people can say that they did. So I'd love to be able to get and to put myself in that position. Okay. The next one I feel like is very Gen Z of me, but I really, really want to get either my real estate license or have like Airbnb properties. I think that it's such a great way to like capitalize on your income. And something else that I think is unique to younger generations is maintaining multiple streams of income. And I think that that can be really important and helpful when we live in such a changing world where things like technology are sort of threatening our jobs all the time. And so I think that having a little side hustle like Airbnb properties or like real estate can, that can be really helpful considering the sort of financial climate that we find ourselves in. So, yeah, I mean, real estate scares me a little bit, only because I really feel like that's the type of field where it really is what you put into it. And if I'm doing this as a side hustle, I don't want to take away from my main stream of income and the effort that I put into my main career. Um, so if I don't feel like I have the time to fully invest myself to be a good real estate agent, that's not something I wanna, you know, invest time into. So Airbnb property seems a little bit more feasible to me. But if you guys have ever seen, I can't think of her account name. Maybe it's just her name. Her name's Carissa, and I'm blanking on her last name right now. But she's on TikTok. She's pretty popular, and she lives in Texas, and um she doesn't do Airbnb. She does like rental properties. She buys homes cheap. She completely redoes them, and then she rents them out to tenants. And she is amazing. She's such a girl boss, like does everything on her own basically. So I definitely have to develop skills to be able to like redo bathroom and like that type of stuff. I feel like I'm good with like interior design, but the hardcore construction is not definitely not my forte. Or enter this like with a partner. That might be the better option. Um, but yeah, I think it would be so cool. And again, it's just such a great way to capitalize on a second stream of income. I hear so many people talking about how they literally use their rent that their tenants pay them to pay their own mortgage. So they basically are living for free, and all the income that they get from their main career, or their main job, is spending money. Like it's not being used towards a mortgage payment at all. It's for everything else. And that type of financial freedom is something that I aspire to have one day. So I think that being involved in rental properties or Airbnbs or something of that sort could could help me reach that sort of state of financial freedom. And speaking of living in houses and properties and things of that sort, I have always wanted to build my dream home. Um, for context, this is sort of rooted in my own upbringing. I grew up in the same house all my life. My parents still live there. Never lived in any other home, and that in and of itself is an experience I'm really grateful for. There's so many memories in that home, good and bad, but ultimately it's my home, and I love it, and I cherish it so much. And that house my parents built. My grandfather on my mom's side was an architect. He designed the whole thing. My great grandfather on my dad's side was he a broker or a real estate agent, or I don't know, but also involved in like homes and constructions and things like that. And so anyways, they were really involved in the process, the building process and everything. And I love my house. It's really special. I think my parents think it's really special. I think it's gorgeous. I love it. Um, Obviously I'm biased, but because I always had the experience of growing up in what is essentially my parents' dream home, or at least was at the time, um, I've always wanted to build my own dream home. And honestly, I don't really know what that looks like. I think I think that's kind of normal because you don't know what sort of stage of life you're going to be in at the time where you're able to afford that dream home. So, obviously, if I have kids at that time or where I'm living, right? Like, there's a lot of factors that are going to contribute into what that home looks like. But I feel like I have a general picture of like decor wise, layout wise. I love like an open concept home. They just feel so much bigger and like airy and light to me. So that's something that I like. I'm also definitely a minimalist. So simple, clean, light colors with like black or like dark, bold accents is something that I like. No like knickknacks, none of that kind of stuff. Those things just stress me out. But yeah, I've always wanted to build my dream home. I just think it's such a luxury to be able to design your own home and make it suit to your family like perfectly. And I think that that's a really luxurious experience to have. And so if I ever have the means to do so, I would definitely want to take up that opportunity. And as I mentioned, like as I get older and think about like post grad life and things like that, I've obviously put more thought into where I want to live. I'm not set on any one place, and I also think the place I would want to live post grad is different than the place I would want to like raise a family in, probably. But there are a few places that stick out to me, all of which are cities. I've very quickly learned I'm definitely a city girl. I do not love the suburbs. I'm from there. It's home. It will always be home, but I love living in a city. I appreciate it so much. The convenience, there's so much to do, there's so many people. Yeah, I've loved my experience living in the heart of a city. And so yeah, I've done a lot of thinking about where I'd want to live. I do love Florida so much, particularly the city of Tampa, but I love Florida so much. I could 1000% see myself living here for kind of a prolonged period of time. I'm not positive if I would want to raise kids here, only because the education system is really underfunded, as we know, and not the best. And as someone who came from a really great public education system and really benefited from that experience, I want to be able to give my kids the same. So I'm not sure that I would want to have kids here, but I do love living in Florida. I also think people here are just a bit more relaxed and like down to earth and chill, and that can be kind of refreshing from the Northeasterners that are really headstrong and just Northeasterners as they usually are. But yeah, so I could see myself living here. I also could see myself living in Boston, which is a little bit of a switch up because I always said I wouldn't move back home, and Boston is really close to home, but it's not home. It's different. It's a city still. I love the city of Boston. I think I would need to explore it a bit more before I was dead set on that. The only thing that really scares me about Boston is the winters. Um, yeah, that would be something to really consider. But I do love Boston. There's something about it that's so community oriented despite the fact that it's a major like metropolitan center, and I think that's so cool. It feels like hometown vibes, yet it's a city, and I think that's really unique. Again, there's so much to do in Boston. There's a lot of like entertainment. There's great food. The city itself is just gorgeous. So, and obviously better education than Florida. Um, so yeah, I've been thinking about Boston as well. Again, maybe for like when I wanted to start a family potentially. And it's closer to home too, closer to my parents and my siblings, at least as of right now. Um, and this is random because I've never been to Texas, but I also like I obviously need to go there and like make sure of this, but it is so cheap to live in Texas. And so the thought of like wanting to build my dream home seems a lot more manageable if I was living in a cheaper state like Texas. Um, and again, Texas seems very cultured, which it sounds cool to me. Um, but yeah, in general, I see myself as like an East Coast girly. Um, with the exception of Texas, obviously. I don't really ever see myself living on the West Coast. I want to visit and travel there a lot, but I don't see myself living there. But the last city is Charlotte. I think that Charlotte is probably like the best of all worlds. Um, it's a little bit closer to home than Florida, obviously. It's gorgeous weather, but not too hot like Florida can be at times. It's a big city, but not like Boston. Um, I actually don't know too much about school systems there. I can't imagine that they're great considering the the Carolinas as a collective actually. Considering their economy, I can't imagine they're great, but they're probably better than Florida, I would assume. Um, and again, a cheaper place to live, definitely much cheaper than Boston, obviously. In comparison to Florida, I'm not sure. I guess it would depend on where in Florida you are. Like, obviously, cheaper than Tampa, but maybe not some other areas in Florida, like, especially northern Florida. So, yeah, Charlotte, not necessarily in this order, but Tampa or like Florida in general, Charlotte, Boston as like my top East Coast cities, probably, and then Texas. And I don't even know where in Texas. I know there's like the three big cities. I would need to go and visit. I've heard they're actually really different from one another. So I definitely need to like feel it out. But I do just really want to go to Texas. So if anyone wants to invite me, shout out Maddie. My friend Maddie used to live in Texas. Now she lives in Louisiana. So kind of missed that opportunity. But Maddie, do you want to take a trip to your hometown? I'll come with you. Um, but yeah, really do want to go to Texas. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll go and I'll hate it and I'll be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I said I'd live here." But you never know until you try. So, yeah. Long story short though, I want to build a dream home in one of those cities probably. But maybe not. You never know where life takes you. Okay. The next item on my bucket list is I really really want to go on a service trip, specifically to Central or South America, I'm thinking. I actually was supposed to go on one this past May to Lima, Peru, with the volunteer center on UT's campus where I actually work. Like I work at the center, and I was supposed to go on the trip with them. Unfortunately, it got canceled due to a lot of um, like scheduling issues and things, but I am hoping, crossing my fingers, that I will be able to go on a trip this year with them. Um, whether that be international or not, I just want to go on a service trip. I think it would be a really, really, really rewarding experience. My uncle is a doctor, and I know he did one. I don't know if it was during med school or after med school, but he did a service trip in, I want to say Honduras, but I'm not positive on that. And I know he's mentioned that experience a few times to me. Also, my best friend Brooke did one in Costa Rica, and that looked incredible. I saw some pictures. Again, hers was medicine based. She went with MedLife, if you guys are familiar with that. She's a pre-med student, so that was like perfect for her. That wouldn't necessarily be the type of service trip I would do, but I would really like to go on one. Something I've run into though is that I find a lot of service trips are religion based. And as I've mentioned, I don't consider myself a particularly religious person. I don't really resonate with any type of like spiritual identity, at least at this point in my life. And so I don't think I would want to do a service trip that was rooted in religion. I'd rather do one that's just not related to religion at all. Um, but yeah, I've noticed a lot are, which makes sense to me, obviously, but I'd rather do one not really connected to religion. So that does limit my options a bit, but I really hope to again achieve this in like the short term. I think this is a really feasible option, um, or very feasible to do for the next year of my life, and I'd really love to check this off. So I'll get back to you on that. There's not really a specific place I'd want to go. Like I said, Central or South America. I'm thinking there's not a specific country though that I'm like dead set on. I'd really be open to a lot of experiences, or even outside of um Central or South America. Maybe those just seem like probably the easiest and most affordable. But um, yeah, I really want to have that experience, and I think that I'd have a lot of fun and learn a lot. So going on a service trip is definitely something that I want to achieve within the next year or so. Wow, speaking this into existence is like overwhelming, but it's good. Um, okay. Last one. Obviously, not the last thing on my bucket list, but the last one we're going to talk about today is I really, really, really want to be a foster parent. Um, I obviously, as I mentioned, am interested in the foster care system, interested in supporting and working with children from experiencing abuse and neglect and traumatic experiences, and sort of supporting youth as much as I can. And I think fostering is a great way to do that if you are the right person. I do want to say this with a grain of salt because a lot of people get involved in the foster care system for the wrong reasons. And I don't think it is something to be glamorized. I do not think it is something that people should do for the check every month. You need to be the right type of person to do this job. And quite frankly, I don't even know if I'm the right type of person. Maybe I'm not fit for it either, but you really don't know unless you get involved and you go through the training and you try. And that's something I do want to give my wholehearted effort to. I think about how close I've been able to get with the kids at my work this summer, and how hard I think it is going to be to leave them, and I've only known them for a few months. I can only imagine what it's like to welcome a kid into your home that you don't know, to build a relationship with them, to help them, to meet their needs in whatever way you can and support their growth. And most likely pass them along. It's very rare that you're able to stay in touch with that child even, let alone like adopt them or something. That's a whole nother path. But I think it's really beautiful to offer stability and comfort and safety to a kid that has likely not experienced that. So if I am ever in a position to offer that to a child that wouldn't have it otherwise, I can promise that I would take that opportunity with grace and truly do my best. It's not an easy job. Well, I mean, I've never done it, but I'm already positive it's not easy, and I can only imagine it's harder than what I even think. And there are challenges that I'm not even considering, but I it's something I really really want to do. I also think not that I would be picky at all. You can't be picky in that sort of position, but I think it's really unfortunate that same thing with the adoption care system, but a lot of foster parents or future adoptive parents want little kids. They think little kids, little problems. They don't want big kids. Um, and so yeah, a lot of times those older kids get neglected and they just sort of get passed along until they're pushed out of the system. And at 18 and they're on their own, and all of a sudden, they're checked off. They don't need to be worried about anymore, etc. And so because those older kids tend to be those teens or preteens tend to be neglected a lot, if I could help them specifically, I would love to. So again, big kids, big problems. They come with their own set of unique challenges, but it's challenging nonetheless. And I think if you're the right type of person to do that kind of work in the first place, I think you can handle it. So yeah, again, that's a big ask. That's something I definitely wouldn't do for a long time, but if I ever have the opportunity to do so, um, I'd be really grateful for that, and I would love to again provide that type of stability for any number of kids that I can. So, those are a few items from my personal bucket list. As I mentioned, some of these are much further away in my future than others, but all of them I'm super excited about. Some big, some small. This is not a comprehensive bucket list by any means, but I tried to pull a few that really stand out to me. Um, and yeah, I loved chatting about them. As I mentioned, this feel to me for some reason feels like vulnerable, and I feel like this shares a lot about who I am and like what I value and what's important to me or what I enjoy. And so I hope maybe you learned a little bit more about me. I would love to hear what's on your guys' bucket list, especially if there's any like obscure or kind of random things. Would love to hear it. Did I have any random things? I don't really feel like it. Maybe opening a restaurant is probably like the most random thing that people wouldn't guess if I were to assume, or writing a book. But none of them I feel like are really way out there. But I'd love to hear some of the things on your bucket list. Maybe next we'll do a what's in my fridge tour and get real vulnerable. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to do that. But yeah, I mean, I also think that hearing other people's bucket list can just be inspiring, and maybe it can lead to some new goals for yourself. So, yeah, I'd love for the comment section to be a little cluster of our own bucket list items, and maybe other people can inspire you to assume some new aspirations. But yes, I hope you all have a great week. I really appreciate you all listening. As I mentioned, I'm trying to grow this platform as much as I can, so expect a lot more content on here and on Instagram, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you come back for the next one, and have a great week, everybody. Bye, guys.